Hey, LinkedIn, and welcome to Business Unusual. This is a live show where we talk about the changing nature of work. I am Susie Jackson. I'm a news editor at LinkedIn, coming to you today live to talk about changes in the virtual event space and whether they can help us make the kind of authentic connections that we were used to making in person before coronavirus upended everything. We're going to be speaking to the founder of a virtual events company and an author and expert in user experience design later in the show. But before we get to that, I wanted to take a look at with you some of the top headlines trending on LinkedIn today, August 3rd. First up, we have the Wall Street Journal reporting that some of the families of frontline workers who died from coronavirus are suing the employers that they say did not adequately protect their relatives. Walmart, Tyson Foods, and nursing homes across the country are among the businesses under scrutiny. LinkedIn member Carol Kwiak is posting that it's a moment to think about the legal and moral implications, saying that at this point, all employers should be on notice. The decisions made today about workplace safety will impact the lawsuits filed tomorrow. Our next story is in another hit to retail luxury department store chain Lord and Taylor has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. Lord and Taylor is the oldest department store chain in the US and back in March had already closed all of its 38 physical stores because of coronavirus. The chain joins brands like Men's Warehouse, Joseph A. Bank, and J. Crew that have also filed for bankruptcy protection recently. LinkedIn member Kenneth Schuckman is posting a question I wonder if you all have. I have it myself. He's asking, will any department store be left after all of this? For more stories like these, check out the LinkedIn News module to the right of your news feed if you're on your desktop, or if you're on your mobile app, if you click into the search box and scroll down a bit, you'll see more of these stories and more from the LinkedIn News team. For today's poll question, also from the LinkedIn News team, we want to know what you think about flexible working arrangements and will they be adopted permanently post coronavirus? Let us know throughout the show today. You can tell us yes, no, unclear. You can share your comments about why you feel those things. We're really curious to hear what you have to say, and we'll check back in at the end of the show. For our main story today, we're going to bring the focus back to virtual events. Most of us on the remote work track are still not gathering much in person. Back in March, when big events like South by Southwest started to be canceled, conference organizers were scrambling to reinvent the experience with online sessions, with ways of networking digitally. Now that the initial panic is, I hope, behind us, we're all used to these hours and hours of video calls. We want to know what opportunities are there to think about events in new ways. Can we still connect as authentically when we can't be together? To talk about it today, we're going to hear from Johnny Bufferhat. He is the founder and CEO of a company trying to figure this very question out, doing events virtually. It's called Hopin. And we're also going to speak with Kat Velos. She is a user experience designer and the author of the book called We Should Get Together. We also heard from you on this a bit already. In a recent LinkedIn news poll, we wanted to know what you thought the key to an engaging virtual event was. And over the course of last week, so many of you weighed in, many saying interactivity was most important, conciseness came in second, and strong production values came in third. We also heard people suggesting opportunities for participants to speak, more and better visuals, graphics, videos, and sharing specific agendas so people virtually could really feel like they could find paths to get into the event programming. I want to keep hearing from you today on this. What do you think virtual events need to be successful? Tell us in the comments if you were set to go to a conference that was canceled, if you participated online instead. Are you interested in online events, or at this time, is it just one more chance to sit in front of a screen, which maybe isn't high on your list of priorities? Talk to me and talk to each other. We love having a conversation with you all during the show and hearing what you're thinking. We're going to get to as many of your comments throughout the show today. And to think through some of these questions, I want to talk to Johnny Bufferhat because he is figuring it out right now for his business. Johnny is the CEO and founder at Hopin. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hi, Susie. Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. I think that your story is really interesting because I'm going to let you tell it. But you had started this company pre-corona. Tell us what Hopin is and why do you think it's different from the other online experiences that we're now all kind of we've dove into at first?
Great. Yeah. So Hopin started off as a way to solve the interactivity and networking online. It came from a place where I wanted to basically attend events with other people, but I didn't want to see myself kind of sitting there watching a webinar and just interacting with a few aspects of it, i.e. chat or polls. I actually wanted to get into an event just like I would in real life, and not only have the opportunity to watch great content, but also to network potentially network with people at the events meet people, see who else is attending, and be able to interact with the organizers or the speakers more. And so that's where Hopin came from. That's what it was created about, and it was pre-coronavirus. So, we've had amazing traction from when we first launched, and I think it's been continuing. And obviously, with coronavirus, it's just been a lot more intense in terms of the growth and growth.
Intense is really a word for the times. And you mentioned webinars. No one wants to sit through endless webinars, especially for a conference if you're already in them day after day for work. Tell us a little bit about what Hopin tries to do to recreate the in-person conference experience, but virtually.
Yeah, absolutely. So we keep a lot of it up to the organizer, where it's the features that we enable that allow attendees to have this great experience or this interactive experience. So if you've ever been to a Hopin event, you may see that there are some features such as a networking feature, a sessions feature, and an expo feature, along with the typical stage that you get at a webinar. And what those do is basically, let's say you're attending an expo or a trade fair on Hopin. Much like real life, you can have a conversation with the person who runs the booth. So you can have a chat with them, get a demo, speak with them about what they're actually selling or presenting at the event on video. So it's our sessions area allow you to break out into smaller group areas. The organizer can say, all right, here we're going to have a workshop room where people can, 5 to 10 people. We've seen events with that or conferences that have mini yoga sessions in between. So it's where people actually get on video. So think of these as like breaking people out essentially into more targeted rooms, etc. in the event. And we also have the networking area, which is more just like you can see who else is at the event, just like a physical event. You can see who else is attending, and you'll be able to reach out to them directly. And so yeah, that's a great picture of one of our session rooms. You can see that this could be one of 20 sessions or 50 sessions or unlimited sessions at an event. So you could be going in and out of different rooms with different context.
This is great. We have some folks joining us in the stream. I want to say hello to and welcome to the program. We have Michael watching from Boston. Hello, welcome. We have Angie from North Carolina, Reese from Atlanta, Brian from Kansas City. Lots of viewers joining us today. Larissa from Vancouver, Susan from New York. Thank you so much for watching Business Unusual. We are talking about virtual events right now with Johnny Bufferhat. He is the CEO and founder of Hopin. It is a company trying to answer this question: how can you make more authentic connections in the conference space when we're still virtual? Kate in the stream is saying virtual events need dynamic speakers. I hope that we are being dynamic enough for you, Kate, as we're chatting today. Amy says training with the appropriate virtual platform is key for a successful event. I think that's an interesting point about getting familiar with the tech. It's not just a matter of who shows up and are they engaging, but the conference organizers have to actually be able to host and understand the problems, etc. Speaking of that, if you're a conference organizer, you dealing with a lot of kind of physical problems on the ground. Maybe someone's late for a session or the electric goes out, whatever. I'm curious, which kind of events are better online than in person? You've got issues with either on the tech side or the physical side, but talk to me, Johnny, about what events maybe are actually even better when you're virtual.
Yeah, absolutely. So we always like to say that there's online events are 20% better and 20% worse at the same time as physical events. And what I mean by that is, so if you take the virtual events market, there's a lot of, let's say, half of it is business events, and the other half is what I bucket under experiential events. And so an experiential event is an event where a lot of people are going somewhere, i.e. a company ski trip, or as a very specific type of event where people are really going to experience something with someone else, concerts, festivals, etc. Really meet that. And then you have business events where essentially you're there to do a little bit of networking and also watch some content. So those are workshops, conferences, meetups, and workshops. And I would say unless networking is unbelievably imperative to it, and the drawbacks are it's inaccessible to go in person. So it's a lot easier online to attend the event. If you're given the opportunity to still network video face-to-face, we've seen now that you can do business online. You can sell your product. You can network with people. You can get all that just from Zoom. You can build real connections. I mean, we're a remote company, and there's tons of remote companies that are out there doing this. And so for a lot of the business events that a lot of us didn't want to travel to in the first place, or spend 4 or 5 days, and even your employer would probably think it's a little bit inefficient. Online probably makes a lot more sense. But then the 20% worse is that experiential part of it. So there's nothing like, after a conference, the deeper network you can get to. Yes, you can close a deal at the conference or meet someone of importance and build a relationship at an online conference. But there's nothing like sharing a beer or going to eat with someone from the conference and really building that network or deeper network and connection like you can in real life. Although people do have Zoom dinner parties and Hopin dinner parties, etc. But I don't know if it matches completely.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to be chewing in front of the camera too much. It's too much for me to worry about people am I masticating too loudly. We've got people echoing some of the sentiment in the stream. Sarah says she misses seeing people and engaging with art and professional development. John asks, virtual, he says it's its own thing. It can't replace a face-to-face meeting. And let's see, we have Reese saying that she is holding food safety classes online for restaurants. She finds that it's amazing to be able to learn and teach in an environment that's comfortable for everyone. So even in the stream, we're hearing this mix of face-to-face can't be replaced, but also Reese saying it's making it possible for me to do my job and people still feel safe and comfortable. So I think it's really interesting to see this develop as we all change our approach and what we're used to with all of this. Johnny, I'm curious, Hopin was in private beta and set to launch in September 2020. I'm really curious about your decision to launch during the pandemic. I mean, in some ways it makes sense, but in other ways it's kind of really unknown to do anything during a global pandemic. I'm curious about what surprises you about the decision that you made to launch early and what you've seen.
So leading up to coronavirus, there was already a huge demand. We had companies reaching out to us and people reaching out to us because it's a lot more accessible. Essentially, a lot of these events are for creating better connections with your target audience or lead generation or something along those lines. And doing it online means that you can get more people. It means that you can interact further and reach a wider audience, which is always important. And it's a lot cheaper to do. And so we had a ton of demand before that. Even our closed beta was a wait list. But during coronavirus, coronavirus first started, and we had a decision to make. And either we could let out the product early, or we could wait until coronavirus was over, which was the plan. We had about 10% more features to build, let's say by September, November. So we were planning to launch September or November, but we thought maybe the coronavirus is going to last only a month or two, but every single person in the world is now open to the idea of virtual events. And if everyone just goes and tries a webinar or something else like that as a virtual event, then they're not going to have a great experience. And so we don't want people to have a bad taste of virtual events when they go back to the real world. And so that's what led us to open it early. And so we had to scale out. We were 11 people, or at the start of the coronavirus, we're now 130, 120 actually. 3.5 months later. So it's been intense, and the amount of user growth we've had. I mean, we've had to put an early access back in a wait list because we wouldn't be able to handle the amount of customers that we've had or people that are interested in running events with us if we didn't.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting position that you were in because we still don't know when this is going to end. But as you said, you were going to launch in September. You thought this was maybe a month or two. And now here we are 3-4 months later with no end in sight. So it seems like it was a good decision to just get up and running. Rhonda in the stream here is saying she really likes the 20% better or worse way of thinking. I'm curious, since you have launched early and you're ramping up and growing all the time, what kind of events are you seeing across the platform? Are they what you expected?
Yeah. So yes, I'd say so. So about 70 to 80% of the events that we get are what we bucket under conferences, workshops, meetups, fairs, expos, trade shows, summits, etc. But there's a percentage now that's been growing of events, and especially during coronavirus, because you get maybe I don't know if it's going to stick, but events that are a little bit more like yoga nights for their team or for friends. Tons of different virtual gym sessions, things that are very similar to the Airbnb Airbnb online experiences, like cooking shows, etc. We've been getting a lot more of those on Hopin. I'm not sure if it's something that obviously, because everyone's bound in their house at the moment, it's just a lot more common. But I would say it's been pretty expected. Like we do most of our events, and it's what Hopin is built for today, is a lot of those business or networking related events that you'd go to typically for business or for your organization.
Yeah, and I'm hearing Dana in the stream saying that she is planning a virtual event herself, working on ways to provide an engaging experience for each person. They are trying to send swag boxes and materials to attendees before to replicate some of that either tactile in-person experience that you're missing through the screen. Johnny, I'm curious, what about hybrid / virtual events, virtual in real life? What are you seeing there? I know you have some experience with that in New Zealand.
Absolutely. So we've had some virtual events. We've had some hybrid events on the platform. We had them even when we were in that closed beta. We've had quite a few where basically with Hopin you can stream an RTMP feed, so you don't get like a second-class citizen who's watching online while there's a virtual event, a physical event happening. No, you can actually have them interacting, and you can perform. You can network with people directly from who are at the event and not on the event. But to answer your question on what are some cool things or what are we seeing right now, the hybrid to physical, I think swag was mentioned. We see a ton of people using stuff like that. So sending swag, setting up deliveries, so asking people to order food to their house or preparing food. We've seen tons of different things in that regard. We've seen face painters, online, not face painters, fortune tellers inside events who you can get a virtual fortune teller consultation, and they'll send you like a bunch of stuff after that. So we've seen a ton of different things inside these events, but I think the future is definitely hybrid. I'd say in our opinion, and we're building more and more software to basically empower it so that because you get a ton more accessibility. I don't think that most traditional event organizers would return to non-online events. It would probably be a hybrid event because you get a ton more accessibility. It's a lot more cost efficient to run, and you just end up with a lot more value, and it's easier to connect people. So you can even host way more events than just a one-off that every once in a while.
Yeah, and we have Karen in the stream saying that they are also focusing on complimentary classes, sessions, and discounts so that the swag bag fits into an envelope and you can keep shipping costs down a little bit. She also has a question for you, Johnny. Wants to know what you recommend in terms of pre-recorded versus live for virtual events. Which percentage would you break that down to?
Our recommendation for whether or not live or pre-recorded. So I would say it really depends on your use case. But what we find with Hopin, Hopin is very much of a live events platform. We try and focus on the attendee interactions, and because you can see it now. Susie's done a great job of basically connecting with people that are in the chat, making sure that people do know that this is live. I can see all the chat messages coming through and responding, and I think that keeps people better engaged. Now, I think you can masterfully set up a pre-event, a recorded stage or a recorded talk. As long as your interactive is in the chat or whatever else. But I'd say I'd always recommend live. People do notice in the end, and there is a lot more value when attendees feel like they can interact, and which they can with the speakers, and I think that's really, really important, and that's why I would keep it live.
Well, Johnny, thank you for answering that question, for doing this live with me, and for saying that we're doing a nice job of talking to people in the stream. I hope that all of you watching feel that way as well. Johnny, it's been great to have you join us, CEO and founder of Hopin. Best of luck as you come to that full launch later on this fall.
Thank you so much, Susie. Much appreciated.
If you're just joining us now on Business Unusual, today we're having a conversation about advances in the virtual event space and whether or not they can help us make the authentic kind of personal connections that we were more used to when we could see each other in person. We are asking in our poll question today if you think flexible working arrangements will be adopted permanently post-coronavirus. Keep letting us know throughout the show. Tell us yes, no, unclear. Tell us your comments about why you think those things. We're going to keep going on the virtual experience topic with my next guest, Kat Velos. She is a user experience designer and the author of the book We Should Get Together. Kat, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show, Susie.
Excellent. We've talking with Johnny about virtual events, about trying to find ways to make authentic connections when we can't be in person. We're also talking a lot about how kind of exhausting it can be to be in front of a screen all day. I'm curious, do you think, what's the breakdown here? Is it more that products have to shift the ways that they deliver to us so that we can make those connections, or do we kind of have to shift ourselves to just get used to this world, or something in between?
I really think it's a little bit of both. Any good event organizer or facilitator is going to not only be helping people understand like getting through the technical challenges of moving to online in this time, but they also need to empathize with people's emotional and mental state and to say like, hey, I imagined you might be overwhelmed with video calls, so I'm either going to make this as different and unusual as I can so it feels fresh and new, or I'm going to give you a break and say what's part of our agenda or part of our connection that we can actually take off video, maybe do a phone, maybe do even offline. I've been experimenting with that in my own events, and giving people a little bit of digital detox as like breaks helps to feel more grounded and to actually feel more connected. It's not always a one shot, like one answer has to be always the same kind of video format. And people find it really refreshing to get a break, almost like a hybridization of the type of interaction that they're having online or offline, but they can still connect with people.
Yeah, refreshing is a great word, Kat. When you and I were getting ready for the show, you suggested that we do an audio phone call. And the moment it was time for us to talk, I thought, oh, thank goodness. This is great. Now I can just speak with her and just listen and not worry about how do I look? Does she think I'm looking at her in the camera? Where's the light? Does something make a noise? And it was a refreshing conversation. I think it set us up well to have this conversation today. So it was a question about where do your energies lie and how much do you have to give. In light of that, I'm curious if you could talk about the idea of social health and staying conscious of the way that that impacts your connections.
Absolutely. We talk a lot about our physical health and we think about how we eat or if we get exercise, and mental health. Certainly our emotional health are things that we understand, like maybe you go to therapy or maybe you like work on personal development or self-care. And social health has to do with the health of our relationships, whether that's your family, friendships, workmates, like whatever it might be. And giving attention to that just as much as you would physical health or mental health. And the health of our relationships typically has to do with the quality of them, not necessarily the quantity. All of us probably know like hundreds or thousands of people we've met in our life, and that doesn't always protect us from loneliness. The United States and around the world, there's a loneliness epidemic, and it is serious. And the answer to that isn't always like meeting more people, but actually going deeper and having more fulfilling relationships and friendships with the people who are already in your life.
With that in mind, are there opportunities that virtual meetings, virtual conferences, and events that can give us that are actually better than we have in person? What do you think about that?
Well, one of the lovely things about it is that it gives you the chance to connect with more people. Like Johnny was talking about, it's more accessible to a wider range of people from different locales. And so the audience of people you want to connect with isn't necessarily limited to just who's in your immediate proximity. Proximity, I talk a lot in my book about the importance of that, and the nurturing that you put into those relationships that are close proximity to you can really pay back like huge dividends. But the lovely thing about all of the move to virtual right now and our ability to connect with each other across boundaries because of virtual events is just really, really making it more easy for people to find their people online.
Yeah, and we're seeing that from Amy in the stream as well. Amy maybe works at a museum, if what I'm gathering from her question, saying that we've taken our visits and tours online and found that, like you're saying, Kat, they're reaching individuals who might not have had a chance to visit before due to lack of resources or time or physical location. She says we've also been able to capture spaces that we couldn't include in in-person tours. So that's kind of a neat thought that maybe you can't go, but you can actually see more than if you were actually there in person. If you're just joining us now, this is Business Unusual. We are having a conversation about changes in the virtual event space. Right now, I am talking with Kat Velos. She is a user experience designer and the author of the book, We Should Get Together. Let's see, Kat, we have a question from Kate in the stream who says, do you recommend any particular training for virtual presenters or facilitators?
Yeah, there are a number of great facilitators that I recommend. Probably the top one that comes to mind I would recommend is a facilitator by the name of Jenny Sauer Klein. She is an amazing, amazing facilitator and experienced designer that is a colleague of mine. I love her programs. I highly recommend them if somebody's interested in becoming a facilitator of virtual spaces. She does a great training called Scaling Intimacy, which is what I'm all about. And I talk about that in my book. It's really about getting more intimate in our connections and in one-on-one connections as well as groups. And that's what you get when you can go into these spaces with more skills. And so I highly recommend checking her out. I can drop her name in the chat or pass it to you so you can follow up with her. Jenny Sauer Klein is her name.
Well, and that's all part of virtual events, right? We're talking, you have a great rack, and then what do? You know, do you break attention with the conversation to go put it in the chat or not? So this is such the questions that we're talking about right now, the problems we're trying to solve, or we're facing them as we speak. Joining us in the stream too, Kelly. Hello, welcome. Kelly wants to say, I can't help but wonder if we should be considering something completely different from a traditional conference. Sitting in front of a screen all day can be a real drag. Kat, you host some conferences and some get-togethers of your own. What do you think about that?
I love the idea because one of the things that I think is the amazing possibility of this moment is that this pandemic has broken up whatever we thought was normal. Whatever we thought was the way business and events and everything had to happen, like that's not necessarily true anymore. And so I think this is an amazing opportunity to do things differently. You know, I'm kicking off an event today that's a month-long connection club for people to nurture their friendships with people in their lives and also get to meet new people. And it's, yeah, we're going to meet online, but the majority of the time is focused on like writing letters, writing cards, sending things to people in their real life, and then getting a chance to talk to other people who care about connection. So part of it's focused offline, part of it's online, just to help us like find our folks. But it's a chance to actually say like, give yourself a digital detox. It doesn't have to be online. Like build your friendships and your relationships by sending them something personal in the mail. Like that is really special. And like the US Postal Service could use our business right now. So do that too. So it's a way to just like really think outside the box and do things different than we ever have before. And that's the huge possibility of this moment.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you're going to have this event that doesn't have any fancy bells or whistles. There's no new software. You're actually kind of taking it to the physical while you're still remote. So you're meeting with whatever software, video, chat, what have you. But you're asking people, if I'm correct, to just take a few minutes to write a card or to create something and then drop that in the mail. So that's already kind of a hybrid. That's not even a new product addressing anything. It's just a new way of thinking about it. In terms of products, so I'm wondering, do you think that there is something that these products can be doing to help? You're already doing a great job with it on your own, but is there something you wish you had that would make these kind of connections easier for you to make as you facilitate events, or you think would help others find that easier to approach?
In terms of the existing like software that people might be using to
Just a wish list, you know, like as an organizer yourself, is there something you thought, gosh, if I had this ability, or if I could solve this problem, or this is really vexing me? Is there anything like that?
One thing I think would be really useful is giving users more like agency and control over their experience in the virtual space. So similar to what Johnny was talking about with Hopin, how when people want to network, like at an event in person, you can like stand off to the side in the corner of a room and like chat with somebody quietly while the conversation's happening, or after it's over, you can continue a conversation in real life, and that's harder to do online. So I would put on my wish list really high is giving people more agency and control over their experience. You know, one of the ways that I do that in my, you know, community building and coaching calls is like taking everybody off mute. In real life, you don't have to ask permission to speak when you're in a group conversation. And so online, it just like creates this weird power dynamic that doesn't need to be there. As long as you don't have like a loud barking dog in the background or something, stay off mute, join the conversation at a natural pace. And that's like an example of something that just happens by default in virtual spaces that I don't think has to be that way. So look at ways that we can give people more control over their experience and allow them to say like, hey, when this is over, if you want to continue talking with somebody that you were in a breakout room with, like just chat me, I'll put you in a breakout room and I'll leave the meeting on for as long as you want. Hang up when you feel like it. That's something I've done in a previous event and people really loved it. I had somebody who stayed on 45 minutes after the event was over talking in their breakout with their buddy. And that's something that they wouldn't have been able to do if I just said like, okay, the event's over and end the call and everybody's just disconnected.
That's a good point about changes and having the way we view what's appropriate and not. You're right. Talking over each other, you wouldn't kind of have to raise your hand and wait to be called on for every comment you had in a meeting before. We were all just collegial and talking. Stacy in the stream is sharing that her tipping point towards loving virtual events. She writes that in all caps. So Stacy is really loving these virtual events now. I'm curious to see where this is going. She says is when they turn the cameras on the audience members during a live webinar, it felt like the closest thing to actual networking to Stacy. So there you go. Kat's talking about the same thing. You know, it's changing the way we're using these tools, not necessarily that we need all new tools to do it. Kat, Reese has a question for you. She wants to first of all have me tell you that she loves your glasses. And then second, she wants to ask how much of your work time do you set aside for relationship building?
Yes, that is a great question, Stacey. And I think it's just as important to my life as it should be with like, do you get a 20-minute walk outside every day? Do you do 20 minutes of exercise? How much water do you drink? And then how much time are you setting aside to nurture your connections? I try to make it a habit to do that every single day, whether it's like sending a card or following up on a message that somebody sent me that was much longer and takes some time to focus and like write them a longer reply, having a phone call with a friend while I'm folding my laundry. Like it's an important thing to make it a habit. You know, part of the reason I started Connection Club and like hundreds of people I interviewed for my books said they wanted to have stronger friendships, but they just didn't have the time. They felt like they were too busy or it just slipped their mind. And so we're going to do it together. It's like accountability buddies and study hall in one, and it's going to be fun. And it's a way to say like, we all value our friends. We all know we should maybe be giving them more of our time and attention. So like, let's sit down and for 30 minutes, let's do it together. Make it a habit. And don't go alone. Tell somebody that that's your goal and then have them hold you to it.
Yeah, go check out Kat's profile on LinkedIn for some more information. That Connection Club is starting tonight if you want to get your hands dirty and start writing a card or making something while connecting with other people. Kat, thank you so much for joining us today and emphasizing relationship building and maintaining your social health and all this, and reminding us that it's not necessarily a bang whiz product that we're looking for, but reorienting the way we think about using the products that we have and making the connections that we do. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, Susie. Thanks, everyone.
And thank you for joining us. I want to check back in on our poll. That was Kat Velos. She is a user experience designer and the author of We Should Get Together. We've been asking you throughout the show today what you think about flexible working arrangements. Will they be adopted permanently after coronavirus? An overwhelming number of you, 84%, have said yes. I think that's great. So that's great. That must mean that we're liking some part of this, even as it's challenging as we all piece it together with uncertainty about how long this will last. Thank you for sharing your votes on the show today. We saw a lot of yeses from Mark and Gerald, James, Michael. I see you there. A couple members said no. Some, Rich, Raleigh, Phil, Mary, you weren't so sure what you felt about this. Maybe that'll develop as we go along. I want to remind you that you can rewatch the stream after the show is over today. Just on this same link, you can rewind back to the beginning and hear all the great comments that we had from Johnny Booferhat and Kat Velos. Join me tomorrow. LinkedIn Business Unusual is live from the LinkedIn news page every day at noon. We'll be speaking with Ella Washington. She's a management professor at Georgetown University, and she's going to be talking to us about performance review season. It is a crazy time to be thinking about managing or marking someone's performance from a manager's point of view or from your point of view as the individual receiving the review. So we're going to be talking with Ella about some strategies that you can use as an individual or as a manager to try and manage those conversations a little bit more smoothly in a really rocky time. So thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you back here tomorrow at noon Eastern.